All right, Greek students, welcome to the participle lecture. So today is Saturday. I'm not sure if you can see this on my screen. It's Saturday, the day after the Friday lecture, in which, just due to circumstances, things did not go the way I would have liked them to. So that's the glory of the internet age, right? So what I wanted to do was actually give you the lecture that I should have given yesterday, which ideally will just help explain participles a little bit better. But also, I also have the paradigms for the participle. So I wanted to show that to you also as we go into week 5 of Greek. So, with no further ado, so here are some things I wanted to talk about. Mainly, what I want to emphasize is how you already know verbs and how we can fit our knowledge of participles into what you already know about verbs, because you already have all of the tools you need to work with participles. It's just a matter of figuring out how to apply those tools. So, in English, here is a present tense verb, watch. The trees watch us. The trees are watching us. The trees do watch us. Watch is our present active indicative verb. But look what happens when we turn that exact same verb into a participle, present active participle. The trees watching or the watching trees. So now the verb ceases to be a verb and becomes an adjective. It is based off of a verb, but it is not really a verb anymore. It is an adjective describing the word tree. So as soon as you have a participle instead of a conjugated verb, notice that we don't have a sentence anymore. The trees watching or the watching trees can do a lot of things in the sentence, but it cannot constitute a sentence by itself. A sentence requires a conjugated verb. So though participles are based off of verbs, they are not acting like verbs. They are acting like adjectives. And as a result, they have a whole bunch of different endings to bring out that adjectival aspect, though they are still built on the stems of verbs. And what makes Greek most interesting is that we can use the different stems that go with the different tenses to make participles have different tenses. Greek is much more flexible in this way than Latin. If I can encourage you again to take Latin next year, Latin really only has two major forms of participles. Greek has participles for every single tense that we are learning and all of the voices that we are learning. Right now, we are focusing on the active voice, but we are focusing on all the tenses. So let's look at some examples. Actually, no, here's what I did just so you can see the difference between the trees watching, like what that needs to be a sentence. You have to add a conjugated verb. And you can really go in many directions with the participle depending on what your conjugated verb is. So in this first example, the trees watching the squirrels whisper to one another. So here, trees is the subject. The trees are still watching. They have an object, which is possible, but then they're doing this whole separate action, the action of the verb. I fear the watching trees. Who wouldn't? That's very creepy. So here, watching trees is in the accusative. It's the object of the verb. Watching is still describing trees, though. The participle is just going along with the noun that it's modifying. That is the destruction wrought by the trees, watching with glee. So here, notice we have kind of two separate clauses in the English sentence, but watching is still going with trees. Watching is still describing the trees. And then we would have like an adverbial gleefully. And in the final example, we would have watching trees like in the genitive. Five of the watching trees are not evil. So there's a lot of possibility, a lot of flexibility, which is both really exciting, but also kind of scary if you're not comfortable with it yet. So that's our goal, is to just get a little more comfortable with what participles can do. So let's look at some Greek. What I've done for all of the examples is I've provided us an example of the verb conjugated and then how we can turn that conjugated verb into a participle in different cases. So this is a present tense example. Ta dendrea ora usi or arosi. The difference here in the verbs is nothing. It's only that ora usi is uncontracted and arosi is contracted. So this first form is Homeric, the second form is Attic. Um, so anyhow, this is a sentence. The sentence means the trees are seeing. Erosi is third person plural, present, active, indicative. It's a conjugated verb. So we have a complete sentence. But these other examples are all the same verb, horao, in the participial form. So ta dendrea horaonta, this would mean the watching trees. This would be either nominative or accusative. So you could make this the subject of a conjugated verb or the object of a conjugated verb. But what's happening here is hora onta has the present stem. That's what makes it present active. But this ending, this onta ending, tells us that it's neuter, accusative, or nominative, and hence it agrees with dendrea, which is neuter, nominative, or accusative. Ton dendreon, horaon ton. So here we have our genitive noun. We have our exact same participle, but with a genitive ending to match the genitive noun. Now, this still means you would still translate this as the watching trees or the trees, comma, watching, but it would be in a genitive. So you could have something like that, those are the leaves of the watching trees. And that final example, tois dendre oisi horausi. This is the dative form to the watching trees. I paid homage to the watching trees. So here, this horausi is dative, present active dative participle agreeing with dendregoisi. Now, this is something I would like to talk more about in class. You may notice that this horausi looks exactly like this horausi. That is, it's neither a glitch nor a feature. This is just something that happens with the dative because the dative plural is full of delights and wonders at all times. So that's just a thing to look out for. In the present active indicative, the dative plural participle looks just like a conjugated form of a verb. That's going to mess you up. It messes up people all the time. Hopefully, we won't encounter it too much in this particular class, but yeah. So, great. So those are present. And I think this is, I'm thinking for most of us, we're very comfortable with this, at least translating it. So let's talk about a future participle, which is something we do not see in English at all. We just don't really use participles like this. But in Greek, they do. So here's a sentence, he thalata klepse. We have this conjugated verb, klepse, built off of the second principal part. So when you take that second principal part, kleps, the stem of the second principal part, and you add participial endings to it, you have a future active participle. And whenever you see this, you can say being about to or about to. That's just, it's very awkward, but that's how we have to bring it out. So when we have he thalata klepsusa, a feminine nominative singular noun with a feminine nominative singular participle agreeing with it, we're going to translate that as the about to steal sea. Here's the genitive form, te thalatas klepsuses, of the about to steal sea. I am sorry, I have tried to fix these, the question mark things. I would normally pause this and fix it, but it's just too much. You see what's happening. This is the dative form te, thalate, klepsuse, to or for the about to steal sea. And then here's our accusative, tain, thalatan, klepsusein. All of these could be translated as the sea about to steal or the about to steal sea. They all have different cases depending on what they're doing in the sentence that they are in with a conjugated verb. So that's how we would bring out the future. And just theoretically, if this is of interest to you, you use the future participle to indicate an action that comes after the action of the conjugated verb. So if we look at these examples, they had set sail on the being about to steal sea. So this conjugated verb had set sail. This tells us that our sentence is set in the past. The conjugated verb sets the time. So they had set sail. This is a past tense action. So in that past tense situation, they set sail on a sea, and the future participle tells us that the sea will steal, but not until after they had set sail. So it's an action after that past tense verb. Similarly, in the second example, the sea is threatening, right? This is a present tense situation, but you would use a future participle to indicate an action after the present. The sea being about to steal their lives, is threatening. So in the present moment, the sea is threatening. In the future, it will threaten their lives. In this final example, we have a future tense verb. Will you love? Will you love the wickedness of the sea being about to steal your hopes? So in the future, you will love or you might love. That's the action is in the future. And then the future participle is an action even after that in the future. So tomorrow will you love the sea that on Monday will steal your hopes. So that's the future is future, but it's future in relation to the verb of the sentence. So yes, and we will work on this. This is the sort of thing that's actually really fun to kind of talk about as you bring out your translations. So that's the future. In this chapter, we're learning both the first aorist and the second aorist. The reason for that is if you have a first aorist verb, the endings are a little bit different in the participles than are the second aorist. As you can imagine, the first aorist just has more alphas, just like it does in life. But otherwise, the concept is exactly the same. So in the sentence, ho angelos apempsen, pempo pempsa, first aorist. So here is our conjugated form of this, the messenger sent, ho angelos apempsen. If we want to say the messenger having sent, we will use that aorist stem, pemps, and then we will add the appropriate endings. So here, angelos is masculine. So pempsas, this is masculine nominative singular participle. Notice too that the participle loses the augment. You never augment a participle. You only ever augment a conjugated verb. So a pempsen is augmented, it is conjugated, but pempsas is unaugmented. And that's actually really helpful. Actually, it's really helpful because pempsas by itself could be a second person singular aorist, but when it's unaugmented, you know that it's not. You know that it's a participle. This is actually a very nice feature of Attic in particular. Homeric, anyhow, let me stop talking. I wanted this to be a short lecture. So here's our nominative, ho angelos pempsas, the messenger having sent. Here's the genitive, tu angelou pempsantos. So you may, this, we'll talk about the endings, but so it's antos. So that's the messenger having sent in the genitive. That is the child of the messenger having sent. Here's to angelo. This is supposed to be dative pempsanti, the messenger having sent. I gave flowers to the messenger having sent. And then here's our accusative form, ton angelone pempsanta. So you may notice, but maybe you don't, and that's totally okay. The participles are following a third declension pattern. As, os, e, a. This is third declension endings. Angelos is the second declension noun. So that's why they don't match up at all. If angelos had been a third declension noun, these endings would look a little more similar to each other. So that's the first aorist. Here are some examples of what the sentences might look like. So the messenger departed. This is a past tense action. When you use an aorist participle, you indicate that the action of the participial phrase happens prior in time to the action of the main verb. So the messenger departed having sent his message. First, the messenger sent his message, and then he departed. That is the power of the aorist participle. In the second example, Clytemnestra wanted to murder the messenger having sent news of her husband's return. So here, messenger is accusative. She wanted to murder the messenger. And then this participial phrase would be also accusative, having sent to agree with the messenger. So having sent agrees with messenger, it has its own object, etc. But what it's telling us is that the messenger, prior to Clytemnestra wanting to murder him, had sent news. In English, we would translate this probably as the Clytemnestra wanted to murder the messenger who had sent news. That's how we do it in English more frequently. So let's talk about that when we start to translate more comfortably, if that happens. But it's very common to do that, and it's the right idea. It's just not what Greek does. And then finally, we have a future tense situation. The messenger will flee. So the conjugated verb is future. The messenger will flee. When we put an aorist participle with that, the messenger having sent away his children, what that's telling us is that the messenger will flee, but before he does that, he will send away his children. So this having sent away his children, even though it's aorist, doesn't necessarily indicate a past tense action. Like today, the messenger could be at home with his kids just having a great Saturday in this very weird heat. But in the future, he's going to flee. But before he flees, he will have sent away his children. So that's kind of the potency of an aorist participle with like a future tense verb. All right, so there's that. I think next, second aorist, same exact idea, same theory, just slightly different endings. So here we have our conjugated form, the goddesses left. He theai elipon. Notice that elipon, our conjugated verb, is augmented. But when we put the same aorist verb into the participle form, the augment drops off. And now our endings look different, not only because they're second aorist, but also because goddesses is feminine. So the endings look quite different from masculine or neuter. But the feminine participle endings will always look very similar to first declension nouns because they're first declension endings. So, he theai lepusai, the goddesses having left. Ton theon lepuson, of the goddesses having left. Tes theis lepusasi, the goddesses having left. I gave roses to the goddesses having left. And finally, this would be our accusative, tas theas lepusas. I miss the goddesses having left. So just like the noun declines, so too does the participle decline, just like an adjective, but using the stem of the verb. So here are some examples of that. Look how sad that girl is. Um, I envy the moisture of the tear. It's so dry. So the goddesses, having left the world, are enjoying their free time. So there's a present tense verb. So the aorist participle here indicates past tense action. Right now, they are enjoying their free time. Yesterday, they left the world. So that's pretty straightforward. In the past, we longed for the having left goddesses or the goddesses having left. So in the past, we were longing for them because they left at a time prior to that past tense time. So it's a little bit pluperfecty. This is why Greek doesn't need to use the pluperfect very much. And then here's a future action. She will curse the names of the goddesses, having left her behind. None of this has happened yet, but in the future, she will curse them after they leave her behind, also in the future. So the power of the participle. And finally, there's the perfect. And this one actually, I think we're going to see some good examples of it moving forward. I'll try to remember to tell you. Well, never mind. I have an anecdote, but I don't know if I want to record it for posterity forever. But so the perfect indicates a past tense action that also has a present or like a consequence contemporaneous with the action of the main verb. If that makes sense to you, I'm amazed. Good for you. You don't really have, you can think about this if you want to. You don't really have to. It kind of just depends on where you are, what other things you have to do. But so, most practically speaking, a perfect participle is just a participial ending attached to the perfect stem. And it essentially indicates you can just do a past tense action, and then we can just like cogitate about what else it's doing in the translation when we see them. So here is a conjugated form. To etos pepoieka, the year has made. Pepoieka, a perfect conjugated verb. So when we take that perfect conjugated verb and add participial endings onto it, we have a participle. And the participle endings for the perfect tense are quite different than the other ones. They're very weird. I guarantee you I will have to look them up in class, and I looked them up in class on Friday just because they're very different. So here's our nominative form, tos etos pepoiekos. This is neuter nominative singular for the participle, which is just very strange to me. But this would mean the year having made in the nominative. Tu etus pepoiekotos, also very strange looking. This is our genitive form of the perfect, the year having made. To ete pepoiekoti, there's our dative. It's got an iota, so that's nice. And then our accusative, of course, for a neuter would just match the nominative. So we'll look at those again. But that's what it would look like in Greek. Here are some examples of where you would use the perfect. Kind of here, you could argue that these are all just past tense, right? The year having made us happy is remembered fondly. Like we have a present tense verb here in the conjugated form. The year is remembered fond. Well, The year is remembered fondly, anyhow, but having made us happy, that is our perfect participle. So right now we're remembering the year fondly, but it made us happy in the past. That's the perfect. I often think of that year having made good memories, the year having made good memories. I often think of it, you are all looking forward to the year having made history. So. So we'll mess around with it. Like I said, these are really fun to kind of bring out in class, the translations. That all of the subtleties of the translations are not to be worried about at this current moment. Really, we just want to kind of get a grasp on what's going on. Um, so in service of that, and I am hoping that this will work, I am going to post this participle. If I'm hoping you can see it, my fear is that it's just stuck on, and if it is, we'll talk about this Google Doc in class, but hopefully you can see the Google Doc. It is huge. It's very long, but it has got all of the participles you're going to need. In fact, as of today, Saturday, January 31st, it has more than what we need because it has the passive, middle passive forms on here. But I made this, so it feels weird to say what I like about this Google Doc, but what one way you could use it is you can just hit that tabs, and if you're looking for a present active participle, you can go there. If you're looking for a future active, you can go there. If you're looking for the first aorist, the second aorist, or the perfect, these are all there for you. So hopefully this will be good, especially going into the midterm when I'm going to be asking you to identify some participles. Um, I hope that that's helpful. So we'll try to use this in class in a productive way. So, yes, so this is all of the stuff that I thought I was going to say on Friday and I got distracted and did not. So hopefully this is useful. And if not, we'll figure it out. We're going to keep talking about it. But thank you for coming with me on this journey. Honestly, it's a process, and we will get there via different paths, I'm sure. So please always let me know how I can make things more clear or less clear if you want. And otherwise, I will see you in class soon, I hope. Okay, I'm gonna stop.